Joining us this morning, House Speaker Jill Krowinski, Democrat of Burlington, and State Senator Randy Brock, Republican of Franklin County, the minority leader in the Senate. Welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Madam Speaker, after the governor's budget address, you again signaled that there are lots of areas of agreement. You can work with him. Is that fair to say?
I was really grateful to hear from the governor shared priorities and goals for this legislative session. You know, we have been working hard last session and continue this session to work on issues that he mentioned and the pro tem and I have been talking about, from affordable housing, workforce development, tackling climate change, making childcare more accessible and affordable, and ensuring that we're doing everything we can to help people through the mental health crisis as well. And so I heard a lot of the same themes of what we've been talking about in our chambers in the governor's speech. And so now it's time for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Senator Brock, is that good news?
It's excellent news. I think there was a lot in the governor's proposal that appeals to Vermonters, regardless of their political stripe. And I think that encourages us to work together to get end results that certainly will help Vermont.
On the workforce and on the labor shortage that has only gotten worse during the pandemic, Madam Speaker, what do you think about the idea of giving a tax break to nurses, nurse educators, to child care workers, and eliminating the income tax on military retirees, which I was surprised to hear most of whom are between 35 and 50. So the argument there is that, you know, they could enter our workforce if they move to Vermont.
So I think that we have broad agreement that workforce development has to be one of the top priorities of this legislative session. And now what we need to do is get into the details and strategies about how to do that best. Last session, we made critical investments in free tuition and critical careers, grants, paid internships, and that paid off. And we got a great response for that. There was even waiting lists for some of those programs. And so I think we have a lot of shared goals with how we can help support nurses, childcare workers, and so many other critical workforce careers that need attention. So what we said, we need to hear more details from the governor on these proposals, and we need to do our own work to hear from experts and directly from nurses and childcare workers and those and other industries that we're concerned about, like housing, from plumbers, from electricians, about what is the best way that we can do to help train and recruit and keep people in those roles.
But you're not philosophically opposed, is that what I'm hearing, to those specific proposals to give a tax break to those occupations that we need a lot more of?
I need to see the evidence that a tax break is the right way to keep people and to recruit people in those positions. So like I said, let's bring people together and hear the details and work together on a plan to make progress on this problem.
All right. Senator Brock, how's that sound to you?
Well, we've heard a lot of this evidence for a long period of time over and over again, and now we need to hear it yet again. Military retirement is a classic example. We're one of only 3 states in the country that don't exempt taxation of military retirement. And these are people in their prime job age groups who come often, who bring a family with them, with a working spouse as well. Many times there are people who bring the critical skills that we are so short of in the medical professions, in things like CDL drivers and so on, based on their military occupational specialties. We need to move forward on this and not let it lag again, as it's done year after year in the General Assembly. This is a potential moneymaker for us, and one of our tasks to the minority is to make sure that we help provide the evidence that will convince the majority that this does in fact make sense.
I will note on specifically, I think we need to do more and get more data and evidence when it comes to the occupations. I do want to be clear that the House did send to the Senate the military piece last year. So that is in the Senate.
Well, I would add, though, that that was a very, very small piece. It was not the exemption of military retirement. It was a token number that really was not particularly meaningful and was not really comparable to what other states are doing.
Let me ask you about the surplus in the education fund. The governor's proposed returning half of it to property taxpayers. How does that sound to you, Madam Speaker?
Well, we absolutely need to hear from stakeholders about how to best use this money and what gives us the best return on investment. One policy idea that our committee is taking a look at is the child tax credit. We saw the impact that the federal child tax credit had in our state and across the country, and that is no longer happening. And so that is one area that I think would give us a really good chance in helping working families get through this pandemic with having that support again. So that is one area that we are looking at and hope to move forward on soon.
Senator Brock, how will you speak out on that issue about what to do with the ed fund surplus?
Well, I've never heard a Vermonter tell me that they pay too little in property taxes. And so the notion of returning some of that money to the people who paid it in makes a great deal of sense in terms of adding money to our economy that will help Vermont as a whole. So that's where I am right now. We certainly are going to hear all the testimony from all the stakeholders and then make a decision that I hope the legislature will all agree on.
Well, every year the governor's budget is just a starting point, we know, and both chambers will be spending the next 4 months devising your own package. But is there broad agreement on the need to build a lot more housing units? I mean, you can't possibly attract somebody to the state if they have no place to live. Is that fair to say, Madam Speaker?
I agree. I think, yes, we need to build more housing. We also have to be creative about the current housing that's out there that could be rehabbed. Sure. Or adding additional units to a building. I mean, there's so many different challenges when it comes to affordable housing that is more than just building more housing. Because of the pandemic, we have supply shortage challenges. We just going back to workforce, we're having challenges finding the people to do the work. And so it's a more complex problem, but this is one where I'm glad to hear that there's strong consensus that this is a priority for us to get done this session.
Senator Brock, is there anything that you wish you heard yesterday and didn't?
I heard a great deal yesterday, and there may be more things that I would wish for, but I realize that there are a limit in terms of what we can do. One of the things that we didn't hear yesterday was much talk about interim strategy for dealing with broadband. And one of the concerns that I have is if it's going to take 5 or 6 or however many years to expand our broadband, and that's just to the places that don't have it, how many mothers are going to be sitting in McDonald's parking lots and in front of libraries in the middle of the winter getting broadband when they can't get it at home? We need an interim strategy, and that strategy may be fixed wireless or a variety of other things that we haven't talked about and that we should.
Madam Speaker, anything you wish you had heard from the governor this week?
Well, again, I'm glad to hear that he was making workforce development a top priority, because last session, we were not completely on the same page as we were working really hard to invest more in workforce development. I want to point out, though, that there was little mention of the pandemic. And right now we are in a surge with Omicron, and it's really impacting our communities and our families. And so, I just got to say, I am so grateful to all of the frontline workers out there who are doing their best to help us get through this. And I see you, and I hear what you are going through, and we are doing everything we can to have your back.
House Speaker Jill Krowinski and State Senator Randy Brock, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.